I want to say this slowly so you can really hear it. I was faithful for more than 40 years. I never cheated, never had a third person, never did anything that society would call wrong in a marriage. And yet, I still lost the longest marriage of my life. I'm not saying this to shock you. I'm saying it because if you're listening to me right now, you may be believing the same thing I believed for decades. I am over 70 years old now. I'm sitting here on a very quiet afternoon. No arguments, no drama, just time and memory. There was one belief I held on to very tightly, that as long as I didn't do anything wrong, everything would turn out fine. That loyalty was the core. That staying was responsibility. That not leaving meant I was good enough. I lived with that belief for far too long, and I paid for it. I never thought of myself as a bad husband. In fact, I thought of myself as a safe one, dependable, someone who didn't cause harm. But there are failures that don't come from doing the wrong thing. They come from the things you never do, and no one teaches us how to face that. If you're listening and a thought just crossed your mind like, at least I didn't cheat, at least I stayed, at least I didn't hurt anyone, then please keep listening. I'm not here to judge you. I was you. I sat very comfortably inside those words at least, and I didn't realize that while I was soothing myself with that minimum moral standard, something else was quietly disappearing from my marriage. No noise, no warning. Just slowly fading. I'll tell you how that began. But before I do, I want to leave you with one very simple question. If loyalty isn't enough, then what actually keeps a marriage alive? After that question, I used to feel very confident about my answer. I thought I was a decent husband, not perfect, but decent. More than 40 years of marriage, no cheating, no violence, no explosive fights. I was there. I didn't leave, and I believed that was enough. But let me tell it more clearly in the way I refused to look at back then. There were evenings when she stood in the kitchen cooking and I sat in the living room. She asked a very simple question. "Are you tired today?" I answered. Just normal, without taking my eyes off the newspaper. She stayed quiet for a few seconds, then went back to cooking. At the time, I saw nothing wrong with that. I thought we talked, didn't we? There were times she told me about a friend, about something small that happened during the day. I listened, nodded, but my mind was already on work the next morning. When she asked, "Are you listening to me?" I said yes, even though I only vaguely remembered a few words. I thought, I don't need to remember everything. It's not that important. One evening she said to me directly, "I feel like I'm becoming invisible in my own home." How did I respond? I said, "You're overthinking it. We're still together." I said it calmly, rationally, and I thought I was reassuring her. I didn't realize that in that moment, she stopped waiting for me to understand. She began to change, not suddenly, very slowly. She stopped asking me things, stopped sharing small stories. Questions like, "Do you want to go for a walk?" slowly disappeared. Reminders like, "Try to come home early," were no longer there. I thought it was because she had adjusted. I called it the stability of a long marriage. There was one time I remember clearly. She stood in front of the mirror for a long time before leaving the house. I asked where she was going. She said she was meeting a friend. I didn't ask anything else. I didn't notice that she had started doing more and more things on her own. I thought at our age everyone needs their own space, but the truth is, she had learned how not to need me anymore. Not because she didn't love me, but because she was exhausted from being the only one trying to carry a conversation, a connection. I continued to fulfill my role. I went to work. I brought money home. I fixed what was broken. I showed up at family gatherings. And every time I looked back, I told myself, I didn't do anything wrong. I never made her cry over another woman. I never abandoned my family. I never said cruel things. I thought that was enough. But I never asked her, "Are you happy?" I never sat down, looked her in the eyes, and listened all the way through a story, without interrupting, without judging, without rushing to conclusions. I confused living under the same roof with truly being together. If you're listening this far, you may recognize yourself in me. Still there. Still not doing anything wrong. Still believing everything is fine because nothing dramatic has happened. But sometimes it's the things that don't happen that are the real problem. And when I look back now, I understand that while I was proud of my correctness, the woman beside me was slowly disappearing from the marriage right in front of my eyes. And if you're still listening, you may start recognizing moments from your own life. Because that phase of my marriage gave outsiders no reason to worry. There were no clear warning signs. No one around us thought we had problems. And neither did I. Everything looked fine. And that was the most dangerous trap. My wife began to speak less the way someone learns not to disturb anymore. First came unfinished questions, then unspoken expectations, and finally, complete silence. If you've ever been in a house where the ticking of the wall clock is louder than the voice of the person next to you, you'll understand. There were dinners where we sat at the same table, each eating our own plate. No arguments, no visible sadness. Just nothing left to share. I remember one time she mentioned a friend who had just moved away. I brushed it off. I thought it was small. But for her, it was one last attempt to see if I was still present. If you've ever said later tomorrow, when I have time, you may have been where I was. I convinced myself that this was just how long marriages were, that this calm was an achievement, that no fighting was good, that no demands made life easier. But I was wrong. That ease came from the fact that my wife no longer expected anything. She stopped asking where I was going when I'd be home. She stopped reminding me of important dates. When I forgot, she stayed silent. If you're thinking that sounds lighter, less pressure, I thought that too. I didn't realize that every time she went silent, she was stepping further away. We lived together like roommates, separate schedules. Weekends passed without a single real conversation. I got used to not being needed, and I confused that with freedom. There were evenings when I saw her sitting alone for a long time staring into space. I didn't ask. I didn't sit down with her. I thought, if it's important, she'll say something. But sometimes people are silent not because they have nothing to say, but because they've said it too many times without being heard. If you're in a relationship where everything still functions, everyone still plays their role, responsibilities are met, but you can't remember the last time you truly looked into the other person's eyes, then you may be standing exactly where I once stood. I didn't do anything wrong, but I also didn't do anything to keep the warmth alive. And at some point, the distance became normal. So normal that no one questioned it, not even me. Until I began to feel an emptiness I couldn't name. That's when it finally hit me. I had confused staying with truly connecting. And by the time I understood that everything was already far more fragile than I had ever imagined. There are nights when I sit alone and ask myself where exactly I went wrong. Not to look for excuses anymore, but to face it honestly. I failed. And the thing that shames me most is not that the marriage ended, but the way it ended in a quietness that I myself helped create. I used to be very confident in the image I had of myself. A husband who didn't leave, didn't cheat, didn't do anything extreme enough to be called cruel. I clung to that image like a life raft. I told myself, you did the right thing, you didn't make any major mistakes. But over time, those words rang hollow. They couldn't save me from the emptiness I felt when I looked around the house, when I looked back at a shared life that had fallen apart. Slowly, I was forced to swallow a truth that was hard to accept. I was not the good husband I thought I was. I was just a man who chose the easiest path. The easiest path was staying in form, not in spirit. The easiest path was making sure I didn't do anything wrong, so I wouldn't have to take responsibility for everything I failed to do. I avoided intimacy through silence. I avoided real conversation through routine. I avoided emotion through logic. And I labeled all of it as normal. When the marriage finally broke, I felt ashamed. Not ashamed of how others might judge me, but ashamed because I knew what I had missed. I was ashamed to realize how ordinary I had been in love. Ordinary in the sense that I did only the bare minimum to avoid criticism, but never found the courage to love more deeply, more closely. I thought I was protecting the marriage with stability. In truth, I was letting it die slowly through indifference. I remember standing in front of the mirror and asking myself, "Do you see it?" You let the person beside you feel lonely, even while you were still there. You heard, but you didn't listen. You were at home, but you weren't present. And the most painful part is this: I can't say I didn't know. On some level, I knew. I just chose not to look straight at it. I chose to believe things would work themselves out, that tomorrow would be different, that there was still time. But time did not stand on my side. It passed quietly, taking with it every opportunity I failed to take. When it was over, there was no one left to blame. No third person, no dramatic event. Just me and a long chain of small choices made over many years. I have to live with that truth every day, the truth that the marriage didn't fail because of one mistake, but because of my lack of courage to love fully. And that is something I may regret for the rest of my life. I'm not saying this to ask for sympathy. I'm saying it because if I don't admit it, then everything that was lost becomes meaningless. I failed. I am ashamed. And it is only from that admission that I can move to the final part of this story with a truth that isn't easy to hear but needs to be said. There is one lesson I learned not after a major argument, but after many years of living in silence. Marriages don't collapse because of one terrible moment. They wear away through moments that seem unimportant. We often think love is made of big emotions, big sacrifices, heavy decisions. But looking back now, I see it differently. Real love lives in very small, very consistent acts, in whether you turn and ask a question, when the other person grows quiet, in whether you pause to truly listen instead of assuming you already understand. I used to think responsibility meant providing, enduring, not leaving. Now, I know responsibility also means presence, emotional presence, not just obligation. If you are in a long-term relationship, you may recognize yourself in this story. Everything seems fine, steady, functional, with no major problems. But be careful with the word fine. Sometimes fine is just another way of saying we've grown used to not being close anymore. Don't wait until you're sitting alone, replaying all the small sentences you brushed aside. Don't wait until time becomes something you can no longer negotiate with. If you've listened this far and feel that something needs to change, start today. It doesn't have to be anything grand, just one honest conversation, one real question, one moment of listening without defensiveness. If this story made you reflect, leave a comment and share what you're feeling. If you see part of your own life in it, press like as a quiet acknowledgement that you recognize it. And if you want to keep listening to real stories, lessons paid for with an entire lifetime, subscribe to this channel. I can't change my past, but maybe what I've learned can help you hold on to what is still in your hands today.